And now time to delve in even deeper on the subject of the much-awaited mineral deal which was signed on Wednesday. What did Ukraine manage to leverage? How is the U.S. going to, from now on, protect their interests in Ukraine and perhaps, by proxy, Ukraine itself? Joining me now to talk about this important development is Editor-in-Chief of Kyiv Post, Bohdan Nahaylo. Good evening. Thank you for joining. We meet again on this important day. And I suppose the key question based on your assessment, this United States-Ukraine Reconstruction Investment Fund, is it good for Ukraine?
It is much better than what had been proposed by the Trump administration only weeks ago. Look, what the Trump administration had proposed was unacceptable for Ukraine, let's be frank. It was extortionist in its character. It amounted to bullying, if you want. You do what we're told, you give us what we want. We take control effectively of your economic future, and you repay us for the military aid that you received during the Biden administration. I mean, amazing. Which other country has even thought of saying something? Imagine Poland saying to Ukraine, look, for the help we've given you in recent years, we want a share of your economy and we want you to do as we tell you. So it was totally unacceptable, smacked of 19th century colonialism. And what is very impressive is that Zelensky managed, despite the pressure, to stand his ground, and the new framework agreement. Remember, this is not the final document. This is the framework within which other agreements, which will concretize, give the details of how this agreement will be applied in practice, will be worked out. So, yes, it's good for Ukraine, given the circumstances.
Yes?
Yeah.
Please continue.
Well, I think what is particularly important, look, is what I've just mentioned, that this new version is based on parity. It's not based on domination by America. It's not based on bullying, as I've said. And it recognizes Ukraine's ownership of its natural resources, and it doesn't have any debt obligation element. You know, you repay us for what we've given you. What is lacking in it, of course, still is security guarantees of some sort. That is left aside, and this is the big headache, the big issue confronting Ukraine, but its neighbors and Europe generally. What will the U.S. do to back up its foothold now in the Ukrainian economy?
And what do you think? What is your opinion? What is the U.S. actually going to do to protect its own business? Because the new administration seems to be pointing in a direction of taking care of their own business first. So if the business is going to be done with Ukraine, on Ukrainian territory, perhaps there is a leeway into some sort of a security or partial security guarantee.
The Trump administration has been very careful to avoid tackling the issue of security. It's standing aside, and Ukrainians don't know what comes next. Okay, right, the Americans will be involved in a joint fund being set up with the Ukrainians based on mineral resources as yet untapped, new ones that have to be developed, and that implicitly suggests that the Americans will be interested in protecting their economic investment in some form. But we don't know what that means in practice. Does it mean that Trump will still insist in placating Putin by writing off a large part of eastern Ukraine, not only the Donbass and Crimea, but right up to Zaporia and the power station there, etc.? That is left unclear. So right now, the situation is much better than it was at the time of that shameful meeting in the Oval Office when there was an attempt to bully Zelensky into conformity. The terms are much more acceptable, but so much more still needs to be clarified, explained, guaranteed.
I'm happy that you mentioned the Zaporia power plant, the nuclear power plant, which is currently occupied by Russia. We've heard from the U.S. administration previously considering taking control over the power plant as part of a peace deal. Do you think that this is possible, and could this lead to a potential escalation between the U.S. and Russia if that was to take place?
Well, look, the escalation is there. Look, let's not kid ourselves. Moscow will not be happy that this framework agreement has been signed and that a common language, at least on this level, has been found finally between Kyiv and Washington. They obviously are not happy by this, but they have made it very clear in Moscow that they don't want to relinquish control of the Zaporia nuclear power station. Let me emphasize, this is the largest nuclear power station in Europe. And it is right in the heart of Ukraine. It's not in the Donbass. It's on the Dnieper River. If you want, this is a time bomb in the very heart of Ukraine. The Russians want to keep control of that so that they have a blackmail possibility through seeing this power station as an effective time bomb. On the other hand,
not the only time bomb, considering.
On the other hand, it could serve as providing the energy for the occupied territories that they occupy, because it's a long way from Moscow. They need that too. So, situation is very unclear. But remember that until very recently, until a few days ago, the Americans themselves were proposing a formula which didn't sound particularly good to Ukrainians, but they were saying, okay, let the Americans take control of safeguarding the Zaporia power station. And no, the Russians immediately came back, said, no, we have it and we will keep control of it.
So do you think it's possible that in the way that the deal was structured between Ukraine and the U.S., it is going to upset Russia to such an extent that the Kremlin is going to decide to pull away from the negotiating table?
They won't pull away. It's not in their interest to be seen to be pulling away, but they will do everything possible to prolong this state of affairs, the fighting. I mean, look at this morning. Odessa was severely hit, deaths.
2 killed, 50 wounded, 6 in critical.
Yes, and this follows, weeks of this intensified bombing. It's not just terror tactics. The Russians also realize that if some kind of peace deal is arrived at, a temporary one, freezing the conflict, they want to grab as much territory in the meantime as they possibly can to justify their claims to essentially a third or more of eastern Ukraine.
And the final question very shortly, the agreement was signed. We know that Ukraine's parliament still has to ratify the agreement, which will probably happen within the next 2 weeks. But when are we actually to see this agreement bear fruit? When are we going to see some extraction taking place and money actually flowing into the fund?
Look, experts tell us that it's going to take not just months, years, and the first dividends, the first concrete results in terms of finances that come out of this is going to be possibly in about a decade, 10 years. So it's a long-term investment. What I would stress here is the symbolism is very important. It's not the practicalities and the imminent results of this agreement, but the fact that it's been signed and it commits America to maintain a foothold in Ukraine, an economic one, but now on a basis of parity and with respect to Ukraine, not in the way that they were treating Canada, Greenland, Panama until recently. And what we note, look, the very important aspect here is that as soon as this agreement was signed, we got news that the Trump administration has renewed the sale of arms to Ukraine. This has been frozen since Trump took over. This is an important element which also suggests that there's some rethinking in the White House, recognition that they're not going to get it all their way.
Definitely an important development. Thank you so much for joining. Bohdan Nahaylo, Editor-in-Chief of Kyiv Post. Pleasure as always to have you on the program. Thank you.
Thank you, likewise.
And so this would be all for now here on World News Tonight, but please do stay tuned. We're back in just a moment with more news and features, and I'll see you there.